Well, Gamecock fans, some good news on the recruiting trail after a couple of days of bad news with the Gamecocks getting edged out by Georgia for Pierre Dean, the four-star defensive tackle out of North Carolina. And then local defensive end Julian Walker surprisingly committing to Michigan. Walker's from Dutch Fork. But today the Gamecocks got a recruiting victory. Now, this was expected. The crystal ball held this time. Noah Clark, defensive tackle from Jordan High School in Durham, North Carolina, commits to the Gamecocks over NC State and Notre Dame. Good win on the recruiting trail for Travian Robertson. This is his second blue chip defensive tackle that he has landed in this class. Also, remember that these days, it's not all the assistant coaches, it's not the rock star recruiters assistant coach wise that just go do it like the old days. Now there's an entire apparatus of people that get involved, led by Darren Usher, the director of player personnel at South Carolina, who took over last summer and who was instrumental in a lot of these guys committing. Shane Beamer, of course, the head coach, deserves credit as well. Clayton White, who's the area recruiter, if I'm not mistaken, South Carolina's defensive coordinator. Also, Clark was a guy that was on South Carolina's radar from the start. He's ranked 126 in the country overall by 24/7 Sports. The composite has him down in the 250. So some artists high on him as 24/7 is. And that's a change. Usually 24/7 is a little bit lower with regards to Gamecock commits. But hey, you take it, man. Defensive tackle recruiting from the high school level, to say the least, has been a challenge. Xavier McLeod was one of the wins that they got, and he ended up getting kicked off the team in 2023 and going to Georgia, and he's playing there now from Camden. They lost Amari Adams from South Florence to Clemson. And other than that, the state hadn't really had a ton of guys. And it doesn't in this cycle either. Now, 2027, you got the Tillman kid, you got the kid from Irmo, and more are going to pop up. I think that's when D tackle will kind of make a resurgence, at least south of the border, for D line heaven. But North Carolina is absolutely loaded with defensive tackle talent this year. Keep in mind, D line heaven is both Carolinas, so it can go back and forth. South Carolina targeted a lot of defensive tackles in that state this cycle after having kind of a breakthrough cycle last 2025 with getting guys like Brian Rowe, who's going to do some really nice things. Donovan Darden was the highest rated recruit in the class from Havelock. And then Austin, the other guy that plays linebacker, that's kind of the bigger linebacker type, Tayshawn Austin, also was from North Carolina. So the Gamecocks kind of had a breakthrough in the last cycle. And then in this one, you go in and get the Harris twins from Weddington High School in Matthews. Aiden Harris is a D tackle. Andrew Harris is an outside linebacker / edge type of player. And both are 4 stars. Aiden's obviously ranked higher as a D tackle, but both are quality players, very physical. And that was a big win because they got those guys when they were on campus for their official visit. And then, Dean, they went the distance with him. He's from the Winston-Salem area. Kind of thought they were getting him in the morning and then ended up opting for Georgia at the end of the day. But that was a good old-fashioned recruiting battle. And then there's Noah Clark, which size-wise, he's the biggest one. He may not be the biggest, like rankings-wise, but it is a huge win as far as getting a guy out of North Carolina like this, and also a huge player. I mean, you look at this guy, he's been as big as 348 pounds when he's measured in and worked out. And obviously, anytime you go from high school to the SEC or major college football, and your body's growing, he's still kind of a younger guy. You got to get the baby fat off and reshape, but you're a massive human being walking in the door. And that's not similar to a lot of the defensive tackles, whether it's in the portal or through high school recruiting that South Carolina signed. The Gamecocks philosophically like versatile D tackles that can play the 3 technique or inside, because of their scheme. They kind of do a hybrid and all that good stuff. TJ Sanders is an example of that. You could put him head up at the nose, or you could slide him out to three technique. And that doesn't necessarily mean smaller. It just means do they have the athleticism, to do both. Gabriel Brownlow Dindy, who came in from Texas A&M, is a big old guy, but he's got the athleticism to do both. And I think Noah Clark on film, when you dig in and watch him, shows that. I mean, I'm watching this guy's junior film move around at what 325. Let's be conservative about it. Maybe bigger during the season. During the season, you usually lose weight, especially water weight in the South. And he's running around with light feet. He's, splitting offensive linemen. What's really impressive is when you watch him in pursuit. In other words, you'll watch a ball carrier go around the end. Noah breaks through the line, and he gets horizontal as far as looking at the field goal goes, and tracks guys down. I thought, to me, talking about Walter Nolan at Ole Miss last year, what really impressed me was watching him in games do that. TJ Sanders was able to do that as well. We saw Boogie Huntley do it a couple of times as well at South Carolina last year. So this is a big guy that can move, and this is what you want, at your D tackle position. I've heard about him at camp. He's really quick, violent hands. On film, you'll watch sometimes potential blockers just get kind of shoved out of the way, like a boom. He just kind of hits them, punches them a little, not punches them with his fist, but the punch with his hands, and they go backward. Did not see a ton of like head up fighting off double teams on film. That may be, I don't know why you wouldn't double team him if you're playing against him in high school, but I just didn't see it in the film I reviewed. But that's always important. But at 330 pounds or so, which is what I think he'll play at 325, 330 at South Carolina, he's got the girth to handle it. They're not going to move that guy pretty easily. So yeah, a big pickup. As far as his recruitment goes, I know Hale McGranahan's report, he was one of the welcome homes that was unannounced. So you can go ahead and check that box off your list if you're keeping score of the welcome homes at home. Gamecocks and NC State were probably the final two. He always wanted to stay closer to the house. Notre Dame, obviously, with the way they've recruited. Notre Dame doesn't have guys like this growing on trees kind of near their campus. They do recruit nationally, obviously, they're Notre Dame, but he's kind of a coveted guy, outside of the region. But this is exactly the type of player you want to get out of D-line heaven if you're South Carolina and located in it. I mean, it's probably not too long ago. This guy would have probably been at North Carolina or somewhere else. So I think this is a very positive sign. It's positive when you make inroads, just as far as getting good talent out of a state you're trying to kind of reverse your fortunes in, especially one that's neighboring you. It's another bonus when you're making waves at positions of need. And what I mean by that is, South Carolina had a big need at linebacker last year, signed several of them. Donovan Darden is a linebacker. Okay, well, that's good. But you may say, hey, that's Havelock. Carolina gets everybody out of Havelock. That's true. But that's still a need. It's still a North Carolina kid. Same with Austin. And then Brian Rowe, obviously receiver, was a big need last year as well. And he can be an early impact guy. Carolina did a good job of getting on him early and holding off some other guys, other teams. And then this cycle, D tackle. That's probably the biggest position of need on the board. You got a state up there that's loaded with them. You almost feel like Carolina had to go and do this. So to get to like Aiden Harris and Noah Clark is absolutely fantastic. It's not something at defensive tackle where I think Carolina is going to be able to avoid hitting the portal. And a lot depends on what happens. Monkel Goodwine and Nick Barrett will be out of eligibility after this year, but you do have some other guys in the pipeline. So I don't know that it's as huge as it maybe was this offseason. Brownlow Dindy, I kind of hope he's only there 1 year because that means he has a really good. All right, let me back up because there's other scenarios that would involve a 1 year stay at South Carolina that are less than pleasant. But, you know, all things being equal, if Brownlow Dindy's only at South Carolina 1 year, then that means he's done pretty good. And I talked to a contact today that feels like, you know, Barrett, Goodwine, Brownlow, Dindy, those guys are ready to go at D tackle this coming season. But it was not going to be a situation where they were going to avoid the portal. I still think D line, heck, man, some schools, no matter what their numbers are on D line, they're out there shopping for defensive linemen in the portal. They're very valuable. You roll a lot in and out, everybody gets playing time. So the defensive tackle situation, and I mentioned some guys they had lost, and then the 2022 class, there was an 0 for 4. So that's 4 dudes that just were bust city. It happens. It's not what happened. It's what you want to do with it. And, they've got it together. They had some guys that were left over. They developed TJ Sanders into a star. They got DeAndre Jules. This year it's Troy Pikes and Barrett and those guys I mentioned. But it's not going to be a situation where you have like a pipeline set up to where, you can be, only going in the portal, because you found a stud or you needed help or whatever. There's a numbers imbalance, and that'll take a little while to work your way out of, especially if you're in South Carolina. Their high school recruiting approach has been kind of like this the last couple of years. They don't seem real interested in just taking guys to take them. They seem to be a little more selective. Now you may say, well, why are you're being selective? You're not going to fill your needs. Well, I think they feel they can. And just kind of like with 2024, it was a smaller class, but you look across that class, and even with the 2 that left, it's just full of studs. I mean, guys that already have made a big impact on the program. And then you fill with the portal. And that's, this is not like JUCO recruiting, which I think the mindset sometimes becomes, there's always like, unless you're Bill Snyder or Jackie Sherrill at Mississippi State and that blew up in his face, you don't need to go heavy JUCO. Well, this isn't as risky as heavy JUCO because you get guys in all classes from the portal, guys with 4 years of eligibility left, guys with 1 year, 3, 2, whatever. And so it's something that we're all going to have to get used to. It's not a bad thing if you have to hit the portal. And I think regardless if they'd have gotten Pierre Dean or not, they were going to have to hit the portal at D tackle this year, most likely. I'll say most likely. There are no guarantees anymore when it comes to roster. But Noah Clark can step in 2026. I think he can be ready to go to get playing time. He's certainly big enough. We all know there's a mental adjustment, and then there's going to be a physical transformation adjustment. It's going to have to get all big guys have to get their nutrition right, their workout regimen right. They got to get in there and compete. They got to get used to the physicality. But you look again on film, and here's a guy that has all the traits. People ask me who he reminds me of a little bit, and I'm going to say this player. You may not remember him because he came to Carolina. He was a pretty doggone good recruit out of Palm Beach, Kenrick Ellis, and played toward the end of 07 and looked fantastic. And then I think he got kicked off. Maybe it was weed or something. They got kicked off, and I think he ended up at Hampton or Towson or Hampton, somewhere up there. But that's who Noah Clark sort of reminds me of. And we ranked Kenrick Ellis a 4-star at Rivals. He was top 250. Obviously, Clark is a little bit higher in certain rankings, but that's kind of who he reminds me of. Some may say Dexter Lawrence. I'm going to reserve that and hold that because Dexter Lawrence is one of the best prospects I've ever seen and made an impact right away at Carolina. I mean, I'm sorry, at Clemson. Shoot, my bad. But I'm not gonna put that pressure on Noah Clark right now, right? But he had 75 tackles last year, which is big for a D tackle. 18 and a half for loss, 4 sacks. He had 1 blocked field goal. I love defensive tackles that can block field goals. Javon Kinlaw blocked a field goal early in his career at Carolina. 2 forced fumbles for Noah Clark as well. So a big recruiting win. There's reason to celebrate, and right here on special I wanted to pop in and give you guys a little bit of a bonus. It's a nice day. It doesn't move the Carolina team ranking up. I think it's 61 this morning. I think it moves it up somewhere in the 50s. Um, but this is one of the five that I discussed yesterday. The other ones, Samari Matthews, Tamarian Watkins, Darius Gray, and Landon Duckworth remain uncommitted. But like I said, I think the Gamecocks have a reasonable shot at all those guys. Reasonable. One could go the other way. I would say if I had to put odds on it, maybe one will. I don't know who, but that's just kind of the way the ball rolls. I told everybody, like, look, you're recruiting a lot of blue chip prospects this time. You're not going to get everybody, but this commitment goes to show you that as disappointing as the Walker situation was, and as disappointing as it was to look like you're getting Dean and not, that here's one that was predicted to go, and it went the Gamecocks' way. Noah Clark, defensive tackle from Durham, Jordan, committed to the Gamecocks. This is JC Shurburtt. This has been the, I guess you call it the special. This is the special, the Noah Clark special. We'll holla at you soon.